Welcome to the Olean Board of Education. Tonight, September 4th, 2012, the day before school begins. So it is with bated breath that I call this meeting to order and ask for a moment of silent prayer for personal reflection. Thank you. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Cross, would you please lead us?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I assume everyone has had an opportunity to look at the agenda. Are there any changes that need to be made to it?
I'll move the agenda, Mr. President.
Second.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Lori. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carried. Is there anyone here this evening who would like to offer public comments? Seeing none, or hearing none as well, then communications or commendations, Dr. Patrick?
Well, we did receive an official letter from Kathy Young's office indicating that she did secure a grant and aid for us for $8,888. So we do have that money, and her hope is that we will be able to utilize some of this additional funding to enhance our current anti-bullying programs that we have in place. So just want to bring that to everyone's attention. Connect 4, when we first met with the Connect 4, we had agreed amongst the boards to have a couple board members represent the entire board for various meetings that might come up. Well, September 11th is one of the first meetings scheduled from 6:30 till probably 7:30, 8 o'clock, something. And we need to know who our representatives will be for that meeting.
Who did that last year?
We didn't have it last
We
year.
didn't have it last year. We just had that big meeting at JCC that everyone was invited.
Correct, and the next one is scheduled for October 30th, right here. That will be all the boards coming together again. Hinsdale will be hosting the meeting.
Is there a number of representatives in mind? Is it one,
Just-
two,
We had,
all of
we
us?
had talked
if we
about
wanna
two.
go?
We
Two.
talked about two.
Okay. Is anyone available, interested in September 11th at 6:30 to represent the Olean Board of Education?
I'd like to, yeah, sure.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Dan.
Jim?
Sure. I'm in town that day.
Game on, thanks, Jim.
Okay, and this meeting will be,
Well, right now it looks as if it does happen, it will be hosted by Allegheny. We've just been going back and forth with exactly what the agenda will be as we move forward, so I'll keep both posted in terms of what's happening.
Any of you working on KCC again, or?
No, it'll be at
Allegheny?
Allegheny Limestone School.
preliminaries September 11th.
Correct. Tomorrow, obviously, first day of school with students, very excited, as always. I didn't sleep last night, I probably won't sleep tonight. I don't know what it is about those first days of school, but just, it's like I still can't sleep, I get excited. So, students walking the halls today along with the teachers, and it's just refreshing when you see them, they're smiling and they're ready to come back. And so I'm looking forward to a great year, just really excited about that. School boards, with this, we're gonna talk about that later, correct? That's what we're bringing us. It's on the
Yes.
resolution for discussion, okay? I did bring it for you.
Okay.
That's what I have at this point, unless people have questions for me.
Then moving ahead on to discussion items, we have two presentations from Mr. Patron about the Summer Star Program and from Mrs. Lyons about the high school summer school. Mr. Patron.
Thank you for that.
Okay, last time I was here, I talked about the STAR program and the agencies and the stuff and the staffing and stuff. This time, what I'm going to talk to you about are the kids and what they got accomplished. First thing is, we went out and asked for volunteers from the high school. We got 9 kids that were gonna volunteer their summer to work in the STAR program. During that course, person from Liberty Partnership came down, saw these kids volunteering and stuff, and decided to give them a scholarship. So they all got $150, not much, but they were appreciative. We also had 9 AmeriCorps kids. Now, the AmeriCorps, in order to do the AmeriCorps, you had to be 17, and that knocked out the ones that were volunteering. So, and what they need to do is 300 hours, and they will get $1,200 stipend to go on to college, and they can use that anywhere from now for the next 7 years. And then we also partnered with DSS and their summer work program, and we had 12 students that were employed through the summer work program. So all in all, we had 30 high school 8th graders working in the program, and they did all kinds of different activities. But they also learned stuff. It wasn't just filing and that kind of stuff. Every day we met with them and we talked, well, what happened today? How do you dress? You know, this was inappropriate. So it was more a learning experience for the workers also. Okay, so you know, address punctuality, how to interact with the children, how to interact with the other adults in the program, how to become positive role models and stuff like that. So every day they got a half hour of this stuff. We had 272 kids in the program. We had 5 3-year-olds, and we actually were able, the staff didn't think they would, but we actually got them to come across the stage. They said their name, they sang a song, and they went on. Okay? Now, but if you think about it, we had 900 people in that auditorium, and there are some adults that wouldn't get up and do that. So, for those 3-year-olds, then we had 39 pre-K kids, and each of them learned how to play the violin and had that type of experience. They also starred in an alphabet video. And they did stuff with the planetarium, and then they did other stuff. This is just the big, you know, things here. The K1 group, we had 70 kids, and they played in a band. They did the planetarium. They wrote, as you'll see it around here, they wrote some fairy tale books. They did artwork to go with their poetry. They did cooking based on children's books. They did robotics. So they had a whole bunch of activities. The 2-4, every cycle they would go swimming and learn water safety. They did dancing. They created a poetry book. They created artwork to go with their poetry. They did cooking based on children's books, robotics activities, and stuff like that. 5th grade, 5 through 12. Now we call it 5 through 12, but it's actually 5 through 8. We do sometimes get a 9th or a 10th grader in there. But they did a newspaper. They got a certificate for babysitting. They did robotics again. They created 3 videos that were used in the program. They wrote and presented a play, they did band, they did orchestra, career exploration, and, or walk the runway. Okay, career exploration and walk the runway was tied together. So, as you see, there was a lot of different activities. I like to call them experiences. Okay, if you go up to the top, imagination is more important than knowledge. Knowledge is limited. Imagination encircles the world. It is a real factor in scientific research, and that was said by Albert Einstein. And if you read his, when I was trying to find a quote to put up there, he has some really cool quotes. So, all the kids, read a model books, and you see some of them up here. What we did was, every day, kids would write on their things, and this is only a part of it. It went around the floor. They attended a Zoomobile. They looked at live birds of prey, and they participated in a show at the end. Now you gotta understand, this STAR program is 20 days. One day of that is the show. So that means we have 19 days, you get 270 kids all doing the same thing for an hour and a half. Okay. The STAR program was a piece, a big piece, but it was only a piece of what we did during the summer. We also did the Music Really Rosie, and we did that at the Oak Hill Park, at JCC, and for Kids Day at War Vets Park. We also provided a free lunch. Our attendance at lunch was about 100 kids, so about almost a third of the kids participated in the lunch program. From 1 to 3, our AmeriCorps people provided a science and or art activity for kids up at Oak Hill Park. And that, we would average 25 to 35 kids a day up there. Okay, and then they also performed at the Taste of Olean. So that was our summer.
And when did you
What?
breathe? And when did you breathe?
Okay. The last time I was here, did I give you that sheet? Somebody has a sheet that,
Nick, is this it?
Yes.
I don't know what it is, but there you go.
last I was here, I put in a plug for the auditorium and stuff. I went online and I did a little research, okay? So, this is what I found. What we own in the auditorium is an electric control board, dimmers, and we don't, the board has been gone for 5, 6 years. So we had to buy a new board. Electric control got into the race for dimmers in 1983. In 1985, they expanded the protocol for dimmer soft patch. That's what we had, 1985. In 1986, Strand acquired electric control. In 1987 or so, I checked with Dave Frederico, we weren't sure of the exact date, but it was somewhere in there. Olean buys electric controls. In 1992, Strand stops production of all electric control design equipment. It's not so much that the equipment has been disbanded, but the software and the method of communicating from the console to the dimmers, it hasn't been around for 20 years, okay? And I'm not sure you can get parts for what we have. So I'm just bringing that up for a second time, with a little bit more data behind it. Okay, I thank you. It was fun. I'll tell you, one experience that I had, I walked into one of the K-1 room, and these kids came running up to me and gave me a hug and stuff. That was worth everything that I did for the summer, so I mean, I enjoyed doing it.
And King Nick,
Oh,
who sits on his
that
throne
is-
right behind you.
That's great. That's incredible.
Okay. Take a look around and look at some of the books and some of the poems and, stuff. The kids are busy doing stuff the whole day. You know,
Kids are
there's
busy,
no-
the staff is busy, and it's because you orchestrate a great production. You did a great job, thank you.
Oh.
And Nick, as to the status of the auditorium, I would ask that our Buildings and Grounds Committee keep an eye and work on keeping that spotlight on the needs of our auditorium.
No pun intended.
No pun intended. Okay? Thank you.
It's not an expensive thing, because the infrastructure is there. It's just taking the dimmers out and putting other dimmers in. When they bought the board, when the old board died, what they did was they bought the board with the present day technology on it. So all we need to do is get the dimmers backstage and,
There we go.
Okay.
Thank you.
okay, thank you.
Thanks, Nick.
And thank you, Paul. Mrs. Lyas, the high school summer school.
Now, while I'm passing this on, I just would like to make a little note about the auditorium that Nick mentioned last time, he forgot this time for me, is we do need new curtains desperately. Every year we go out and get them sewed and patched or whatever way, so as you look at it, and you have to look at it because you have to have the safety too. So right now, we can't even send them out to clean because we don't have all the safety stuff on them, so I just want you to think about the curtains too as you do that.
Okay.
I thank him for the great presentation he just did. This is gonna be more mundane, but very exciting. Exciting because we had kids come to summer school, and they came to summer school because they wanted to learn. So, you know, there was no other reason to be there except they wanted to pass, they wanted to learn. And if they didn't work and they didn't come, they weren't there anymore. So they all came because they wanted to be there. So we had a total of 85 students. 58 were from Olean, and we had 27 from outside the district. They came from Portville, we had some from Pennsylvania, we had some from Allegheny, so we had them from all over that came to us this year. Now, when you look at the first part, it says non-regions. Now, what that means is, and when you look down, you see English 11. There were students who passed regions, but didn't pass the class. Because no longer, I think at one time in this district, it used to be if you passed the regions, that became your passing grade. Well, they're saying, no, there's more to class than just passing the regions. You have to have the full experience of the class to be able to pass it. So some of the kids came and just to pass the class and didn't have to take the regions. And those are the kids that passed that were non-region that happened to take the regions. On the other side, these are the students that had to take the regions, and you can see how they did. Some of them did very well. You see Global 5 out of 11 does not look as good as we'd like it, but you can see what's happening there. At the very bottom, you have the region test distribution. We have 17 that passed and 16 that didn't. We don't have it broken down who were Olean and who were not. But let me tell you about the exciting part of summer school. What did happen at summer school, we had two gentlemen that had a very good senior year, having a lot of fun. And they didn't study and work as hard as they should. But they realized when it came to summer school, it was time to get that work done. They attended every day, and it was surprising because actually after attending every day, they got the highest scores in the class. They earned their diploma, and I was very pleased to get 2 more graduates of diploma this summer. So I think that's the real thing of it, that these kids can come and succeed, and it gives them another chance. They're still counting the graduation class. They're both going to JCC this fall. So we're real excited about that. So thank you very much, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to do this. Thanks.
Thank you, Barb. Any questions or comments? Thank you again. Moving on to the superintendent's report, is there anything further to add? Then we are on to the consent agenda. Thank you, John. And thank you, Glory. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carried. Item 10, A, upon the recommendation of Dr. Taggarty to approve 75 passenger school bus lease agreement.
So moved.
Thank you, Lori. And a second? Michael? Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carried. Upon the recommendation of Kelly Taggarty, thank you, Paul.
Second.
Thank you, Jim. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carried. C, upon the recommendation of the superintendent to approve the 2013-14 budget development calendar.
So moved.
Thank you, John, and a second, Amy. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carried. Item D, to approve.
So moved.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Gordon. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carried. And finally, upon the recommendation of the superintendent to approve Rachel Burrows, Terry Burrows,
moved.
and Roger Wanglin. Thank you, Dan.
Seven.
Thank you, Jim. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstained? Motion carried. Moving ahead to personnel, there is the appointment and a recommendation for that from the superintendent for
So
Catherine
moved.
McClure. Thank you, John.
Second.
Thank you, Paul. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carried. Committee reports. First, audit. Ms. Branch?
Thank you. We had a lengthy meeting. We spent about an hour with David Tan from BWB talking about the internal controls risk assessment report, which I think all of you received as part of the packets for this evening. In general, all good news. We passed all of the testing that we expected to. There were a couple items where there was some back and forth between the administration and Dave about what was the appropriate action to take, and the committee agreed finally on what the steps would be, so that's good. We had just a few more items come on to our audit tracking sheet, but generally speaking, it was a successful audit, and we identified some new areas for testing for the next time. We also talked about accounting for fixed assets, which was one of the questions in the audit, and we decided that we would continue to use the asset control solutions because it's a very effective and efficient way for us to do that. We did go over the conflict of interest statements. They were all provided to everybody, and they were reviewed as needed by each individual. We, again, as we always do, looked at the internal tracking sheet. We were able to remove some items, which was great, and our internal tracking sheet continues to be the best practices standard for BWB when they go out to other school districts. So we are doing, we invented best practices, which is very cool. And then we went through our committee goals, which we all agreed to, and our meeting adjourned a little bit after 1. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Any questions? Mr. Martello, Finance Committee report?
We met Thursday, August 30th. Kathy provided us with a cafeteria update in terms of the number of meals, adult meals that were served, which was 1,138, and there were 72 adult breakfasts that were purchased. We went through the fund balance projections for 11-12, and based on the amount of fund balance, we'll be moving a small amount of money, 72,000, into the employee retirement reserve fund. Kathy gave us a document on the reserve balances as of 6/30/2012, and there'll be roughly 700,000 that will have to be used for working capital from the tax
Situate.
yeah, that one.
Certiorari.
Yeah. Money we keep in reserve. Money we keep in the reserve for taxes. That'll leave us about $113,000 balance, which we feel is appropriate based on what we have outstanding at the moment. We reviewed the budget ad hoc committee, budget advisory committee. We reviewed some of the 10 topics starting in September and going through March of next
year, as well as went over the purpose and ground rules for the Budget Advisory Committee. Kathy presented us with the budget calendar, which we approved, which was 13 and 14 fiscal year, and just no sooner get into the new year, and you're already talking about budgets for the next year. And she also provided us with some budget assumptions. There were a variety of items, bigger items, particularly in terms of items affecting revenues. Could have been the ERA, title grants, ERF grant, summer program, so on and so forth. Also provided us with some assumptions that are associated with some of the bigger expense items such as health insurance, employees and teachers, retirements, utilities, and so on. So she provided us with those. Budget assumptions are the basis for how to develop the budget and the various scenarios that will go into budget preparation. We also have a document in terms of the utilities that were spent in the various buildings for the 11-12 year and also for a 12-13 budget. We were provided with information. We at one point in time had a motion to close all the remaining 2 elementary schools by, what was the 3 years, and we decided that we needed to put that on the agenda for today, put that on the agenda for today for some discussion. And also, lastly, there was a request from the small city school districts asking school districts to participate in, I guess we can call it a class action, and whether it be a $3,000 participation, $2,000 or $1,000. The Finance Committee recommended that we bring before the board a recommendation of participating at the $1,000 level. Then Kathy shared with us that she went to Medicaid training and shared with us that I guess Albert Einstein is probably the appropriate person to reference here, and suggested that Albert Einstein would have a difficult time going through the formula for the Medicaid. So Kathy will continue to bring herself up to speed and then eventually bring us up to speed in terms of the calculations and the formula, and more importantly, the impact on us. So, and then we adjourned at 2 o'clock.
Thank you. Any questions? Well, you heard mentioned the 2 things under discussion items. Let's see if we can discuss them. The first being, we have a motion that reads as follows: to authorize and direct the superintendent of schools to close 4 elementary schools with the closing of Boardmanville and Ivers J. Norton as of June 30, 2012. Furthermore, the superintendent is authorized and directed to prepare plans to close the remaining 2 elementary schools, Washington West and Eastview, within 3 years in order to move to a single campus contingent upon voter approval of a capital project. And it seems that that second sentence is the one in question, whether or not we want to continue with that, whether we want to change it, delete it, move the time frame out. It is really something that we as a board ought to discuss, so we're not setting the superintendent down the road we're not prepared to follow, or walking a direction that we have maybe upon further reflection, additional thoughts about. So the floor is all of yours to talk. Yes, Lori.
Could we alter the last sentence to ask the superintendent to investigate the possibility of closing the 2 additional schools and moving to a single campus? Because certainly we need to, she's got to investigate, we've just got to develop an idea of budgets, et cetera, running both ways, with them open and not open.
Would investigation involve the expenditure of funds? other than time and energy on staff's part in terms of architects and engineers and bond councils and all of those things.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
so I think we have to separately approve those. And you need to change your first sentence, because it says to close the 4 schools, and you need to delete that. It says to begin.
Right. Okay. Gordon, your thoughts?
I would break it down to 2 employees.
Mr. Bartlett?
Though I don't see things improving in the New York State budget anytime soon, I think for the upcoming year, we have enough on our hands, enough on our plates, rather than to saddle the business manager and the superintendent with investigating something that I think the voters of this district would not have an appetite for in terms of a capital project to do that. I think nothing is lost by delaying that because things could happen. My recommendation would be for someone who voted on the positive side of that motion, to introduce a motion to amend. Because by Robert's rules, that is who can introduce that motion.
Jim?
Well, we could be here for quite some time, I'll be brief. Right now, we were at a crossroads in February where we had no choice but to shut down 2 schools, and obviously that wasn't the vote. 2 schools did have to go away regardless. As far as the other 2, we're at a crossroads right now where we don't need to shut down any more schools. And the thing about it is, unless it's going to be totally accepted by the community, there really isn't, it's a last resort. That's all it is. Right now, you have an east and west concept, which we talked about before, in the elementary reconfiguration. We went through all the pros and cons. There's a lot of pros that go along with it. But we had no choice but to shut down the 2, and the remaining 2 schools should be left alone until the community has enough time to absorb what's going on. We just pumped $3 million per school in capital projects, and anybody that's paying attention, even though it's more state aid than anything else, not that much local, it's still $12 million. And think about just wasting $12 million shutting down 4 schools is probably not something people want to stomach. And there's a lot of people out there that value neighborhood school concepts like myself. And I don't see any time in the near future, unless it does become a last resort, that we should even consider that option.
Amy?
I agree 100%, especially regarding state aid and spending more money on capital projects, robbing Peter to pay Paul, so to speak. As a district, we're in financial dire straits, but as a state, we're also in financial dire straits. So, and I don't believe that it is something that the community would support.
Mr. K?
Well, I guess I gotta stick with what we originally did. We did it out of economic necessity, and it was agonizing, and I thought part of the intent was that we were trying to commit to what we were going to do with the one campus concept, so that the community would know, and I don't know that anything has changed financially. We're talking about losing more federal dollars this school year, so I don't know if anything has happened financially to put us into a position to keep schools open. and to change the resolution that we already passed.
Well, I'm a supporter of keeping as much of our neighborhood school system intact as possible, and, I agree with my colleagues, to the left. I do, though, support, a cost analysis as kind of a contingency in terms of, what the closures would net out in terms of financial benefit to the district, if there is a financial benefit. I think that that's prudent for, our administration to do that type of analysis. But I guess I would lean strongly on, developing whatever means we can to, preserve whatever concept of a neighborhood, small city school system that we can. And I would hope that the analysis, transcends financial. If we look at academic performance in terms of what a lot of the segments of our previous neighborhood school systems entailed, I think that has to factor into that type of analysis too. And also in terms of what it would do, raising self-esteem levels from children, I think that all has to factor into that type of analysis.
Yeah, we discussed this at finance. I think what we're looking to accomplish here is not put ourselves, with the artificial deadline that is in this resolution. I don't think that anything is off the table necessarily. I don't think anything's on the table necessarily. But, rather than, we kind of put a time frame on this that may or may not be realistic. And I think what we're looking to do is simply release the time frame. And I think that, the financial situation of this district is going to be fluid as we go forward. And I think that we're just going to have to be fluid as a board and to get saddled with a deadline that we put on it at this point in time. Like I said, we're just trying to take a step backwards from the resolution that we put there and the time frame so that we can react and do the things that are proper fiscally for the school, educationally for the school. And I think that we've demonstrated all along that we will, be on top of things as things change. We will do what's necessary, and I think that, we have a good mindset in terms of doing budget projections that are out there for more than just the next year. So we're looking far enough down the road to begin to anticipate some of this stuff. We've done some of the work in terms of analysis, what it might cost us to do, one campus. So we do have some of those figures right now, but this resolution, as we discussed in the finance, is simply to release the timeline, and free us up a little bit with that.
Dr. Taggart, any thoughts you may have?
Well, I go back and forth with every thought that this board just stated. You go back and forth all the time, but from our seat, it truly is about releasing the timeline. There is absolutely no way that we are, as a district, going to be ready, prepared to move forward to close 2 additional schools in 3 years. Is it something that may have to happen later? It may. But I believe by releasing the timeline, we still go forward with analysis, whether it be achievement, academic, cultural, community analysis, as well as the cost and the financial. That doesn't inhibit us from doing that or prohibit us from doing that. It's just the time frame of 3 years is a bit unrealistic.
It seems to me that we have a variety of opinions, but the sense is to release the time frame, and if not abandon the time frame ultimately, as well as staying at 2. So taking those 2 points into account, we will craft a resolution towards that end, and if it needs to be moved by one of those in the majority in the prior meeting and seconded by one of those in the majority at the prior meeting, so be it.
The second doesn't matter.
The second doesn't matter? Okay, so we will clarify that and then have a motion that we can fully discuss discuss further at our next meeting, to release the time frame while continuing the ongoing analysis, so as not to rule anything necessarily out, but that of the time frame in the single campus by a particular date. Yeah.
Can we just a thought here, can we just vote to shut down the two schools which we already have and just leave it at that? And at any given time, if the community does accept the concept of a single school camp or single campus, that would be the time we just go out with capital project. If they vote no, we keep our two remaining elementary schools. If they vote yes, that means they're accepting that philosophy. And just leave it at that, whether it's 3 years, 5 years. So basically, it's just a matter of time, and the community will let us know one way or the other.
Well, I think by releasing the time frame, that's the end result.
Okay.
It seems to me.
Yeah.
And we can have more
Jim, I totally agree with you. I think we can keep community, if we can keep neighborhood schools or east-west, that's preferable. The problem is that according to the projections, that's the $1.5 million that we had planned to close the gap in 2 or 3 years. So I think we need to keep it at least on the table for investigation, because your choice is, when you have to close that $1.5 million gap, you can either let 25 teachers go, or 25 staff and employees go, or you can talk about the schools. And that's why I think we need to, I'm not saying that that's the way we're going, but I do think we need to know the numbers that can be gained. And it may turn out, as Dan pointed out, that it isn't less economical to go to one campus than it is to stay at two, but not looking to find out which one is better. I think that we just disserve ourselves, and we disserve our public tremendously.
I'm not disalowing the idea, it's just right now, it will be decided by the community, and that's where it should be ultimately.
Yeah,
Because
and
they
it
don't-
always will be, because it requires a capital project, and we have to vote on that.
Exactly.
Also, I mean, I'm uncomfortable with the fact that we're saying close schools or lay off teachers. There are a number of things that are not mandated that we currently fund that could also be looked at as well, in my opinion.
So, other than sports and
Well, sports
extracurricular,
or an extracurricular.
but
that-
if we cut anything else, that's gonna involve
Well, not
jobs,
only
right?
cutting, but sharing. Yeah, administrative salary, sharing, employees to replace administrative salary.
The problem is that with the district
There's
being 75 to
possibilities.
80% personnel costs, when you have to make cuts, there is nothing you can do but cut personnel.
And
We can
raise
turn
class
around the
sizes
edges.
and that sort of thing, but
Yeah.
I mean, there may be opportunities through Connect Four and sharing BOCES positions and redefining our administration. I'm uncomfortable with, saying close buildings or lay off teachers.
Well, when
To
we
me,
share a
there's a lot of
position with
other things
BOCES, we are gonna lay off somebody.
Well, I'm saying teachers,
Oh, I
or
said,
lay off
no,
teachers.
I
know.
think perhaps you stopped listening, because then after that I said, teachers, staff, employees.
Sure. Right, well, and currently looking at opportunities to outsource and Connect
Right.
Four, and, it's not cut and dry years down the road, it's gonna be this, it's gonna be that. I mean, there's still a lot of possibilities.
And there's nothing in the resolution that would mandate that.
Right.
No, and I think finance is on top of trying to get the maximum efficiencies out of all of the kinds of things you mentioned, sharing services or those kinds of things.
That was the topic of our last meeting.
Dan, you
I
wanted
was
to
just
say
gonna
something?
point out, I think everyone has really touched on it very well, but, from my perspective, there's 2 issues here. There's releasing the time frame, which I think is, I'm hearing a consensus to do that. That allows us to, take a step back and to really determine what are the most effective assessment measures should we have to, down the road in X amount of years, approach closure. The other issue that I know that we're all thinking about and warrants, a lot of community perspective and community thought is, do we want to move to central campus? Because that in itself is changing, the scope of our school system, and I think that needs time. It needs time for discussion, it also needs time for a lot of community input. But I think we have time on our side by releasing the time frame, and the amendment is the most effective way to do that, so.
So coming soon to an agenda near you.
Excellent.
Thank you, everybody. The second discussion item involves the New York Association of Small City School Districts and their lawsuit Just to preface and build on what Mike reported out of finance, by way of background, New York State Association of Small City School District had filed a lawsuit that involved fairness, like Committee for Fiscal Equity's campaign involving large city school districts. And it's been litigated for several years, I believe, at this point. And what I've highlighted is 13 small city school districts have won through the Court of Appeals the right to go to trial. So they get the next step. And they are asking for our help, which is needed more than ever. And they asked for either a gold $3,000 or silver $2,000 or bronze $1,000 sponsorship from us, since we would ostensibly benefit as a small city school district and they represent us. And finance had recommended a $1,000 bronze level sponsorship. So your thoughts about it, and should we entertain a motion to that effect next time? Yeah, John.
Do we pay dues to this association? We do. Any association I've been involved with, this is covered by dues.
Okay, yeah, Dan.
Although we do pay dues, this is a class action suit, and I think what we're doing here is lining ourselves up with probably 13 or 14 other similar small city school districts in a pitch, to receive overburden aid. Years ago, there was a Heard decision, and I believe the class action suit would allow us to receive that type of Heard decision overburden aid, and I think it's well worth the $1,000 investment in it.
I'm not arguing the investment.
Right.
I'm just wondering why they don't have the resources to do this.
I would just speculate that, as they mentioned in their letter, they're going up against the state of New York, which has virtually unlimited resources, and this Small City School District Association has limited resources. I think that's all right. Jim?
Whether it's $1,000, $2,000, or $3,000, is there any difference? Say hypothetically, the lawsuit is won. Is that gonna mean any difference between how much money we're gonna get?
No,
Okay.
they can't.
So, okay.
Any other thoughts? So let's put a resolution on our agenda next time to support this at the bronze level, and we'll see where it goes. I believe we need an executive session. Dr. Taggart had mentioned that for the purpose of
Contractual possible grievance.
contractual and potential grievance. So I would entertain a motion to that
I move
effect.
to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing a specific contract and for the discussion of potential of court agreement.
Seconded.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Dan. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? We'll take a 5-minute break and repeat.